السويطان مدين بذكر داخل بدانا نوزي بيودني أنتنا دساتن سنسي.
She was never supposed to fall in love with the man she was sent to destroy. That was rule number 1. No emotions, no sympathy, and absolutely no attachment. But nobody warned her what loneliness looks like when it wears a billion-dollar suit. New York City glittered like a promise that night. Lights reflected off glass towers, traffic hummed below like restless energy, and somewhere above it all, 70 floors in the sky, Adrian Wolfe watched the city as if it belonged to someone else. People believed billionaires lived perfect lives. They imagined champagne mornings and endless celebrations. They never imagined silence. His penthouse was enormous, designed by world-famous architects, filled with art worth more than most homes. Yet every sound echoed. Every room reminded him that success had cost him something permanent. Trust. 5 years earlier, Adrian Wolfe had nearly lost everything. Not to competitors, not to markets, but to love. The woman he planned to marry had smiled beside him while secretly tearing his empire apart. She sold his secrets, manipulated his company from inside, and disappeared before sunrise. Since that day, Adrian trusted numbers more than people. Numbers didn't lie. People always did. So when his public relations team suggested he needed a girlfriend to repair his cold public image, he almost laughed. Love had nearly ruined him once. He wouldn't make the same mistake again. But this wouldn't be love. Just a performance. Contract. A role. And roles could be controlled. That was the idea. Until she walked into his life. Across the city, Elena Cruz stood in front of a mirror that didn't belong to her. The apartment was temporary. The identity was temporary. Even her confidence felt rehearsed. She adjusted the sleeve of her dress, studying the woman staring back. Elegant, composed, unreadable, perfect. Exactly what Adrian Wolfe's team was looking for. Exactly what she needed them to see. On the table beside her lay a thin folder, worn at the edges from years of handling. Inside were newspaper clippings, legal documents, and one photograph. Her father, smiling gently at the camera, unaware of what was coming. 3 years ago, he had died after exposing financial corruption tied to powerful executives connected to Wolfe Global. Authorities ruled it suicide. The case closed quickly. Too quickly. Elena remembered the last conversation she had with him. "You don't understand," he told her, voice tense over the phone. "Some people are too powerful to fight." 2 days later, he was gone, and every trail she followed led to one name, Adrian Wolfe. To the world, he was a visionary billionaire. To her, he was the man whose empire stood on the ruins of her family. She spent years preparing, learning finance, studying corporate structures, becoming someone capable of entering elite circles without suspicion. Revenge wasn't emotional anymore. It was strategic. And tonight was the beginning. Her phone vibrated. A message appeared. Car waiting downstairs. She closed her eyes briefly. This was it. Once she stepped into Adrian Wolfe's world, there would be no turning back. She picked up the folder, hesitated, then left it behind. The past had guided her here, but the future required a different face. As she walked outside, a black car waited with tinted windows. Quiet, expensive, anonymous. The driver opened the door without speaking. The city lights blurred as the car moved toward Manhattan's financial district. Elena watched skyscrapers pass by, unaware that her carefully planned mission was already beginning to unravel, because she believed she was entering the life of a villain. She had no idea she was walking into the story of a man just as betrayed as she was. High above the city, Adrian reviewed her profile one last time. Elena Cruz, background clean. Education impressive. No scandals. No obvious motives. His assistant stood nearby. "She tested exceptionally well with media focus groups," she said. "People find her trustworthy." Adrian closed the file. Trustworthy. The word felt almost ironic. 6 months, he said. "That's all." "Yes, Mr. Wolfe. A fake relationship. Public appearances. Smiles for cameras. Then both would walk away unchanged. Simple. predictable, safe, or so he thought. The elevator doors opened behind him. Soft footsteps approached. He didn't turn immediately. He had learned long ago that first impressions revealed more when people believed they weren't being watched. There was a pause, a breath, then a calm voice. "Mr. Wolfe." He turned. And for the first time in years, something unexpected happened. He hesitated. Elena stood beneath the soft office lights, confident but not arrogant, composed yet strangely warm. Her eyes held intelligence, and something deeper he couldn't immediately read. Mystery, danger, or maybe sadness. For a brief moment, neither spoke. Two strangers connected by secrets neither understood yet. Adrian extended his hand. "This will be strictly professional." She shook it. Her touch was steady. Of course. Neither noticed how long the handshake lasted. Neither realized that in this exact moment, their lives had already changed direction. Because hidden beneath contracts and carefully rehearsed smiles, one carried revenge, the other carried fear. And before 6 months were over, one of them would be forced to choose between truth and love. And the choice would almost cost them everything. Adrian Wolfe lived above the world. Not metaphorically, literally. His penthouse sat at the top of a glass tower overlooking Manhattan, where the city stretched endlessly beneath him like a living constellation. Yellow taxis moved like streams of light. Helicopters crossed the skyline. Neon signs blinked through midnight fog. From up there, everything looked small. Problems looked small. People looked small. Even emotions felt distant. That was why he chose it. Height created distance, and distance felt safe. Every morning began the same way. Automated curtains opened silently, revealing sunrise spilling across steel and glass. Financial reports waited on a digital screen. Assistants scheduled meetings before he finished his coffee. Efficiency ruled his life. Precision replaced spontaneity. Control replaced connection. Adrian Wolfe was admired everywhere he went. At boardrooms, executives listened carefully before speaking. At charity galas, investors competed for his attention. At interviews, journalists described him as brilliant, disciplined, unstoppable. But none of them saw the moments after midnight. When the meetings ended. When the cameras disappeared. When silence filled rooms designed for celebration. He often stood alone by the massive windows, watching couples walk far below, laughing, arguing, living ordinary lives untouched by billions of dollars or public expectations. Money had given him freedom, but it had quietly taken intimacy, because wealth attracted attention, not affection, and Adrian knew the difference too well. 5 years earlier, love had almost destroyed him. He rarely allowed himself to remember her name, but sometimes memories slipped through anyway. Laughter in this same penthouse, shared plans, wedding invitations never sent. She had known his routines, his fears, his vulnerabilities, and she used all of them. When her betrayal surfaced, it wasn't just business damage. It was humiliation broadcast across headlines. Billionaire fooled by his own fiancée. The scandal nearly collapsed Wolfe Global. He rebuilt the company stronger. But emotionally, he rebuilt differently. No trust without proof. No closeness without boundaries. No love without contracts. Since then, every relationship in his life had an expiration date, including the one he was about to begin. That evening, Adrian attended another elite charity event. Crystal chandeliers shimmered above crowds dressed in designer perfection. Champagne glasses clinked softly. A string quartet played music nobody truly listened to. He moved through the room effortlessly. Perfect posture, measured smile, controlled charm. People laughed slightly louder at his jokes. Conversations shifted when he approached. Phones subtly lifted to capture photos. To outsiders, he looked powerful, untouchable. But inside, Adrian felt like an actor repeating lines from a script he no longer believed in. He excused himself early, stepping onto a private balcony overlooking Central Park. Cold air greeted him. Finally, quiet. For a moment, he allowed his expression to drop. The mask slipped. Loneliness returned instantly. And somewhere across the same city, a woman prepared to enter his world carrying secrets heavy enough to destroy them both. Elena Cruz didn't belong to luxury, at least not originally. Her apartment overlooked a busy street where sirens replaced violin music and streetlights flickered instead of glowing elegantly. But tonight, everything about her looked different. A black evening dress rested perfectly against her frame. Her hair fell effortlessly over her shoulders. Diamond earrings, borrowed, not owned, caught the light when she moved. She transformed easily. Too easily. Because reinvention had become survival. She studied herself in the mirror carefully, adjusting her expression until emotion disappeared. Warm but not vulnerable. Confident but not arrogant. Trustworthy. That was the version Adrian Wolfe needed to see. But beneath the calm exterior lived a storm of memories she never escaped. Her father working late nights at the kitchen table. Stacks of financial documents. Worried conversations cut short when she entered the room. And the last hug she ever received from him. Tighter than usual, as if he already knew danger was coming. After his death, Elena learned something important. Truth didn't always win. Power decided which stories survived. So she stopped waiting for justice. She decided to create it herself. A sleek black car arrived exactly on time. As she stepped inside, city lights reflected across the tinted windows, briefly revealing her real expression. Not nervous, focused, calculated, because her presence in Adrian Wolfe's life wasn't coincidence. She had studied him for years. His habits, his scandals, his enemies, even the way he avoided personal interviews. Everything about him suggested guilt, or so she believed. But there was one thing she hadn't prepared for. What he was like when nobody watched. The car pulled up to Wolfe Tower. The building rose into the night sky like a monument to ambition. All glass edges and glowing floors. Security doors opened instantly. Staff greeted her with quiet respect. She walked through marble halls that reflected soft golden light, each step carrying her closer to the man she blamed for everything she lost. Elevator doors closed behind her. As the numbers climbed higher and higher, her reflection stared back from mirrored walls. For a brief second, uncertainty flickered. Not fear. Something else. Doubt. She pushed it away. This was a mission. Nothing more. Upstairs, Adrian Wolfe waited. Downstairs, Elena Cruz ascended. Two lives moving toward collision. One searching for control. The other searching for truth. And hidden between them, a secret neither was ready to face. Because sometimes the most dangerous mystery isn't deception. It's discovering that the person you were taught to hate might be the only one who truly understands you. The elevator climbed in silence. Floor 40, 52, 63. Each soft chime felt louder than the last. Elena watched the numbers rise, her reflection multiplying endlessly across mirrored walls. The higher she went, the farther she felt from the life she once knew. From crowded streets, unpaid bills, and memories she carried like invisible scars. Up here, power lived. And tonight, she was stepping directly into it. She inhaled slowly, calm, controlled, prepared. She had rehearsed this moment hundreds of times. What she would say, how she would smile, when she would look away. What she hadn't rehearsed was uncertainty. Because somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice kept asking a dangerous question. What if he isn't the man you think he is? The elevator stopped. Doors opened. The top floor of Wolfe Tower didn't look like an office. It looked like a private world. Soft lighting replaced harsh fluorescence. Dark marble floors reflected warm golden tones. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed Manhattan glowing beneath the night sky. Alive, restless, endless. The city felt close enough to touch, yet impossibly far away. A receptionist greeted her politely before guiding her down a long corridor lined with modern artwork worth more than most people earned in a lifetime. Every step echoed gently. Every second stretched. At the end of the hall stood a single set of glass doors. She could see him through them. Adrian Wolfe, standing with his back turned, hands resting casually in his pockets as he looked out over the skyline. For a moment he didn't move, didn't turn. He seemed completely still, like part of the city itself. Powerful. Alone. The assistant opened the door quietly. "Mr. Wolfe, she's here." He nodded slightly. The assistant left, and the door closed behind Elena with a soft click. They were alone. Adrian didn't turn immediately. He had learned something valuable over the years. People revealed themselves in silence. He listened instead. The faint sound of her heels against marble. Measured steps. Not hesitant. Not overly confident. Controlled. Interesting. Most people entering his office carried nervous energy. They spoke quickly, filled silence, tried too hard to impress him. She didn't. She waited. That alone caught his attention. Finally, he turned. And time seemed to slow. Not dramatically, not romantically, just enough for observation. Elena stood calmly beneath the soft lighting, posture relaxed yet alert. Her expression held composure, but her eyes told a different story. They weren't intimidated. They were studying him, as if she had already formed conclusions, as if she knew more than she should. Adrian felt something unfamiliar. Curiosity. "You're Elena Cruz," he said. Her voice was steady. "Yes." No nervous laughter. No exaggerated politeness. Just certainty. He gestured toward the seating area. "Please." They sat across from each other, a glass table separating them like an invisible boundary. For a moment, neither spoke. Outside, the city pulsed with life. Inside, tension quietly formed. Adrian opened a thin file, her profile, though he had already memorized it. "Your background is impressive," he said. "I work hard." Simple answer. Too simple. Most candidates used this moment to sell themselves. She didn't. Instead, she looked around the office briefly, taking in details: exits, layout, artwork placement. Observant, careful, almost strategic. He noticed. "You don't seem intimidated," he said. A faint smile touched her lips. "Should I be?" The question lingered between them. Not flirtatious, not challenging, just honest. Adrian leaned back slightly, studying her more closely. There was confidence there, but also restraint, like someone constantly measuring how much to reveal. He recognized that behavior. It mirrored his own. "This arrangement," he said, sliding the contract toward her, "is purely professional." She glanced at the papers but didn't pick them up immediately. "I understand. No emotional expectations." "Of course. No surprises." For the first time, she hesitated. It lasted less than a second. But Adrian noticed. Something flickered behind her calm expression. Something almost like guilt or conflict. Then it vanished. "None," she said softly. Silence returned. But it wasn't uncomfortable. Felt charged. As if both sensed an unspoken layer beneath the conversation. Adrian rarely trusted instincts, but his instincts now whispered a warning he couldn't explain. There was more to her story. Much more. And strangely, that didn't make him cautious. It made him interested. He extended his hand. "If we do this, we do it convincingly." She looked at his hand. For a fraction of a second, emotion crossed her face. Sadness, maybe regret, before composure returned. She placed her hand in his. Her touch was warm, steady, not rehearsed. The handshake lasted longer than expected. Neither pulled away immediately, and in that brief connection something shifted. Not attraction, not yet. Recognition. Two people who understood guarded lives. Two strangers hiding truths. Adrian released her hand first. "When do we start?" she asked. He answered without hesitation. "Tonight." As she stood to leave, Elena glanced once more at the skyline behind him. From this height, the city looked peaceful, almost innocent. She wondered how many secrets existed beneath those lights, and whether she had just stepped into one she didn't fully understand. At the door, Adrian spoke again. "Miss Cruz." She turned. "Yes." His voice softened slightly, almost thoughtful. "You're not what I expected." Her expression remained calm. "That makes two of us." She left the office. The door closed quietly. Adrian remained standing, watching the empty space where she had been. For reasons he couldn't explain, the room felt different now. Less silent, more unpredictable. Meanwhile, inside the descending elevator, Elena allowed her composed expression to crack for the first time. Her heartbeat raced, not from fear, from confusion, because the man she had just met didn't feel like a villain. And that realization was far more dangerous than hatred ever could be. The mission had officially begun. But already something was going wrong. The performance began the next morning. News outlets announced the relationship before breakfast. Photos appeared online within hours. Adrian Wolfe stepping out of his car, Elena beside him, her hand resting naturally on his arm as cameras flashed endlessly. Headlines called them unexpected. Social media called them perfect. Only they knew it was scripted. At least, in the beginning. Their first public appearance was a charity luncheon overlooking Central Park. Crystal glasses, soft piano music, wealth disguised as generosity. Elena played her role flawlessly. She laughed at the right moments, listened attentively to investors, and spoke with warmth that balanced Adrian's reserved presence. But Adrian noticed something strange. She never tried to impress him. Most people leaned closer when he spoke, hoping for approval or opportunity. Elena didn't. Sometimes she even disagreed with him, gently, intelligently, and instead of irritating him, it intrigued him. During a quiet moment between speeches, she leaned slightly closer. "You look uncomfortable," she whispered. "I'm not." She raised an eyebrow. "You haven't blinked in 3 minutes." He almost smiled. Almost. It was the first unscripted moment between them, and neither mentioned it again. Days turned into weeks filled with rehearsed intimacy. Private dinners for photographers. Walks through carefully selected locations. Hand-holding timed perfectly for cameras. But between those moments existed something real. Car rides after events became quieter, less formal. One evening rain poured against the windows as their car moved slowly through traffic. The city blurred into streaks of light. Elena removed her heels, sighing softly. "Do you ever get tired of pretending?" she asked. Adrian watched the rain instead of her. "I stopped pretending a long time ago." She studied him carefully. "That sounds lonely." He didn't answer, because it was true. He began noticing small things about her. She always checked exits when entering a room. She rarely answered personal questions directly, and sometimes, without explanation, she disappeared. Not dramatically, just gone. One evening during a gala, he turned to introduce her to an investor. She wasn't there. Security said she stepped outside. 10 minutes later, she returned calm and smiling as if nothing happened. "Everything okay?" he asked quietly. "Yes," she said too quickly. The answer felt rehearsed. A question formed in his mind. Why does she keep leaving? Another night, they shared dinner in his penthouse after a long event. No cameras, no staff nearby, just city lights and silence. She wandered toward the massive windows, staring down at Manhattan. "It looks peaceful from up here," she said. "It isn't." She glanced back. "You sound certain." "I've seen what people do for power." Her expression changed slightly, thoughtful, almost sad. "Sometimes people don't have a choice." The words felt personal. He noticed the shift immediately. "You're speaking from experience." She hesitated, then smiled softly. "Everyone has a past." A gentle deflection. Another unanswered question. And Adrian realized something unsettling. He wanted to know her story. Their connection grew in quiet ways. He began saving her favorite tea without mentioning it. She adjusted his tie before events without thinking. Once, during a crowded press entrance, flashing lights overwhelmed her briefly. Adrian noticed her discomfort instantly and placed a protective hand at her back, guiding her forward. The gesture was instinctive, not part of the act. She looked up at him, surprised. For a second, neither remembered cameras existed. That image went viral. The billionaire finally looks in love. Neither admitted how accurate it felt. But the mystery surrounding her deepened. Late-night phone calls she took in private. moments when sadness crossed her face before she quickly hid it. And always that feeling she was preparing for something. One evening, Adrian entered his office unexpectedly. Elena stood near his desk computer. She stepped back immediately. "I was looking for you," she said. Her explanation came too fast, too smooth. He nodded slowly but said nothing. Trust issues he buried years ago began rising again. Patterns felt familiar. Secrets, half-truths, distance disguised as kindness. Still, he ignored the warning, because for the first time in years, the penthouse didn't feel empty. The change began subtly. Elena started pulling away, not publicly, privately. She responded slower to messages, ended conversations early, avoided quiet moments where emotions might grow too real. At events, she remained perfect. But afterward, she seemed distant, like someone already saying goodbye. Adrian felt it immediately. He just didn't understand why. One night on the rooftop terrace, wind moving softly through the city air, he finally asked, "Did I do something?" She looked genuinely surprised. "No." "Then why do you feel far away?" The question lingered between them. She turned toward the skyline instead of answering. Lights reflected in her eyes. Dangerous honesty almost surfaced, but she forced it back down. "This was always temporary," she said quietly. The words hit harder than expected. "I know the contract," he replied. "That's not what I mean." Her voice carried emotion now, fear mixed with regret. She stepped back slightly, creating space between them. And Adrian felt something he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. Rejection. That night he couldn't sleep. Old memories returned, betrayal disguised as affection. Promises turning into manipulation. His mind began connecting patterns. Her disappearances, her guarded answers. The tension in her voice whenever his company's past was mentioned. A thought formed slowly. What is she hiding? And more dangerously, is she using me? Meanwhile, Elena sat alone in her apartment, staring at documents spread across the table. Evidence, emails, names tied to corruption, proof that powerful people were still watching Adrian Wolfe. And now, watching her. Her phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "You're getting too close." Her hands trembled. This was never supposed to become emotional. She was supposed to gather truth and leave. Instead, she had begun caring about the one man she planned to expose. And caring made her vulnerable. Dangerously vulnerable. The next day, Adrian watched her carefully during a press interview. She smiled perfectly, answered flawlessly, but he saw tension others missed. Her hands slightly shaking, her gaze drifting toward exits. Fear. Real fear. Afterward, he caught her before she could leave. "Elena." She stopped. "We need to talk." Not angry, not cold, just searching. She looked at him, really looked this time, and for a moment her composure cracked, as if she wanted to confess everything. Instead, she whispered, "You shouldn't trust me." Then she walked away, leaving Adrian standing alone, heart heavy with a realization he didn't want to accept. He was already too emotionally involved, and the woman he was beginning to care about might be the very person capable of breaking him again. The question was no longer whether she had secrets. The question was how dangerous those secrets truly were, and whether love, real love, could survive the truth waiting just beneath the surface. The feeling started as instinct. Adrian Wolfe trusted instinct more than evidence. Instinct had saved his company before. Instinct had warned him before betrayal. And now instinct whispered the same quiet warning again. Something was wrong with Elena. The first signs it began with small inconsistencies. A driver reported dropping her off at locations that didn't match her schedule. Security footage showed her leaving events through service exits instead of main entrances. Phone calls she refused to take near him. Late-night absences explained with polite but vague answers. Adrian didn't confront her immediately. Instead, he watched, observed, waited, because truth always revealed itself eventually. One evening, after she abruptly left a charity gala claiming a headache, Adrian made an unusual decision. He followed. Not personally, he wasn't reckless. But discreetly, his security team tracked her car across the city. Not toward home. Toward an older financial district building long abandoned after corporate fraud scandals years earlier. Adrian stared at the live location on his phone. Confusion turned slowly into suspicion. "What is she doing there?" he murmured. No one had an answer, and for the first time since meeting her, fear replaced curiosity. Twist 1. The secret meetings the next night. Adrian reviewed surveillance footage obtained quietly through private channels. Grainy video showed Elena entering the building. Minutes later, another figure appeared. A man in his 60s. Gray hair. Nervous posture. Adrian froze. He recognized him instantly. Victor Hale. Former Wolfe Global board member. Resigned years ago during the company's biggest internal investigation. The same scandal tied to Adrian's near collapse. Officially, Hale disappeared from public life. Unofficially, rumors claimed he avoided prosecution through powerful connections. Adrian's pulse slowed dangerously. Why would Elena meet him? The footage continued. They argued. Even without sound, the tension was obvious. Hale handed her a folder. She hesitated before taking it. Then she left quickly. Adrian leaned back in silence. Pieces began forming a terrifying possibility. This wasn't coincidence. She had entered his life with purpose. The question was she spying on him? Or trying to expose someone else? The distance grows. Elena noticed the change immediately. Adrian became polite again. Controlled. Professional. The warmth between them faded overnight. At dinner, conversations shortened. Eye contact disappeared. The emotional closeness they built quietly dissolved into formality. It hurt more than she expected, because now she understood something she never planned for. His opinion mattered to her, deeply, and losing his trust felt unbearable. Twist 2. The hidden truth about her father. 3 days later, Adrian received an anonymous envelope at his office. No return address. Inside was a single photograph. Elena standing beside a man Adrian hadn't seen in years. Miguel Cruz, the financial analyst whose death triggered the investigation that nearly destroyed Wolfe Global. Adrian's breath caught. He flipped the photo over. A handwritten message read, "She didn't choose you by accident." Memories crashed back instantly. Miguel Cruz wasn't an enemy. He had been an ally. One of the few insiders who tried to expose corruption within the company's board. Adrian had tried to protect him, tried to stop the illegal trades before they escalated. But someone leaked information first. Miguel died days later, and Adrian was blamed publicly. Realization hit like cold water. Elena Cruz, same last name, same eyes. The truth arrived all at once. She wasn't random. She was Miguel Cruz's daughter. She entered his life believing he was responsible for her father's death. Adrian closed his eyes slowly. Pain mixed with understanding. She hadn't betrayed him for money. She came for revenge. And somehow, that hurt even more. Confrontation without answers. That evening, he confronted her quietly. No anger, just exhaustion. "You knew who I was before we met," he said. Her face lost color instantly. Silence confirmed everything. "Yes," she whispered. The admission landed heavily between them. "Why?" he asked. Her eyes filled with emotion she could no longer hide. "I thought you destroyed my family." The words broke something inside him. Years of carrying blame resurfaced. "I tried to save your father," Adrian said softly. She shook her head, confused. "I've seen the files." "So have I," he replied. "But not all of them." Doubt appeared in her eyes for the first time. But before either could continue, his phone rang. Security. Urgent. Someone had broken into Wolfe Global's private servers. And the breach originated from Elena's login credentials. Twist 3. The real enemy revealed within hours. Chaos erupted. Stock prices fluctuated wildly. Confidential files leaked online. Media headlines accused Adrian of financial crimes long buried. Evidence looked undeniable. Digital trails pointed directly to Elena. She stared at the screens in horror. "I didn't do this," Adrian wanted to believe her, but evidence stacked relentlessly. Access logs, security clearances, encrypted downloads under her identity. His greatest fear returned. History repeating itself. Another woman close to him. Another betrayal. Yet something didn't fit. Her reaction wasn't guilt. It was fear. Real fear. Then a final message appeared on Adrian's private monitor. A live video feed activated automatically. Victor Hale sat in a dark room, smiling coldly. "You were always too honest, Adrian," Hale said calmly. "That made you predictable." Elena gasped. Hale continued. "Your father trusted me once too," he added, looking directly at her through the camera. "That was his mistake." The truth detonated. Hale and remaining corrupt board members had orchestrated everything years earlier. They framed Adrian, silenced Miguel Cruz, and now used Elena's identity to finish destroying Wolfe Global while turning them against each other. Adrian understood instantly. The relationship, the leaks, the timing. Elena wasn't the enemy. She was bait, and now both of them were targets. The screen went black. Silence filled the room. Elena's voice trembled. "They're going to destroy you and blame me." Adrian looked at her, truly looked, past suspicion, past fear. Two people manipulated by the same enemy. Two lives shaped by the same tragedy. Outside, sirens echoed faintly through the city. Danger was no longer emotional. It was real. And for the first time since meeting her, Adrian Wolfe realized something terrifying. Protecting his company was no longer his priority. Protecting her was. The city outside continued moving as if nothing had changed. Cars flowed through intersections. Neon lights flickered. People laughed in restaurants far below. But inside Adrian Wolfe's penthouse, everything felt suspended in time. The truth had rewritten their story. Enemies were real. Danger was real. And the distance between them suddenly felt unbearable. Elena stood near the windows, arms wrapped tightly around herself, staring at the skyline she once believed belonged to a villain. Now it looked different, colder, uncertain. "I ruined everything," she whispered. Her voice carried exhaustion more than guilt. Adrian watched her quietly. For weeks he had suspected deception, prepared himself for betrayal. But this wasn't manipulation. This was grief colliding with truth. "You didn't," he said calmly. She turned toward him, disbelief filling her eyes. "I came into your life to destroy you." The confession finally escaped fully, raw and unguarded. "I studied you. I lied to you." Every smile at the beginning was part of a plan. Each word seemed to hurt her more than him. Adrian absorbed the honesty in silence. Years ago, anger would have come easily. Now something else rose instead. Understanding. "You believed I killed your father," he said quietly. "Yes." Her voice broke. "And now?" Tears gathered but didn't fall yet. "I don't know what to believe anymore." The weight of loneliness, he walked slowly toward her, stopping a careful distance away, close enough to feel presence, far enough to respect uncertainty. "I know what it feels like," Adrian said, "to live with a story everyone else believes about you, even when it isn't true." She listened, surprised by the softness in his tone. "They called me ruthless," he continued, "cold, manipulative. For years I wondered if maybe they were right." He rarely spoke about himself. "Never like this. The night my company almost collapsed," he said, voice quieter now, "I realized something. Losing money didn't scare me." He looked directly at her. Being alone did. The honesty landed heavily between them. Elena saw past the billionaire for the first time completely. No power, no control, just a man tired of protecting himself. Her confession, she took a shaky breath. "When my father died," she said slowly, "everyone told me to move on." Her hands trembled slightly. "But grief doesn't move. It waits." She laughed weakly through emotion. "I needed someone to blame, and you were perfect." Adrian didn't interrupt, didn't defend himself. He simply listened. "I thought getting close to you would feel like justice," she continued. Instead, her voice softened. It felt like peace. The admission surprised even her. Silence followed, not empty, but heavy with realization. Every shared moment suddenly carried new meaning. Every laugh, every quiet car ride, every glance neither understood before. None of it had been entirely fake. The first real break, her composure finally shattered. Tears fell freely now. "I didn't mean to care about you," she admitted. "That was never supposed to happen." Adrian stepped closer instinctively, not touching yet, giving her space to choose. "That's the problem with plans," he said gently. "Life ignores them." She laughed softly through tears. For the first time since they met, she looked vulnerable without trying to hide it. And Adrian felt something shift deep inside him. Not guarded affection, not cautious interest. Something deeper. Trust beginning again. Slowly, painfully. A moment without walls. The storm outside intensified. Rain striking the windows in rhythmic waves. The city blurred into silver light. Elena sat on the couch, emotionally drained. Adrian returned moments later carrying 2 cups of tea. No staff, no assistants, just a quiet gesture. He handed one to her. "You remembered," she said softly. "You always drink this after stressful events." She smiled faintly, a small detail, but it meant he had been paying attention long before he admitted it to himself. They sat side by side, shoulders barely touching. Comfortable silence replaced tension. For once, neither pretended. His biggest fear after a long pause, Adrian spoke again. "I stopped believing people stay." She turned toward him. "My brother died when I was young," he said. "Then my fiancé betrayed me. After that, trusting anyone felt irresponsible." His voice remained calm, but emotion hid beneath every word. "When you walked into my office," he continued, "I told myself you were temporary." He exhaled slowly. "I didn't expect to miss you when you left rooms." Her breath caught. He rarely revealed emotions directly, but now every word carried weight. "And now?" she asked quietly. He met her gaze. "Now I'm afraid again." "Of what?" "Of losing someone I didn't plan to need." The confession lingered in the air. Raw, unprotected, real. Choosing each other, Elena wiped her tears slowly. "I don't want to hurt you," she whispered. "I know, but staying near you might be dangerous." He nodded once. "It already is." A small smile appeared between them. Shared understanding in the middle of chaos. Outside forces threatened them. Secrets still unfolded. Trust remained fragile. Yet something undeniable connected them now. Not contract. Not performance. Choice. He reached for her hand carefully, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. Their fingers intertwined naturally. No cameras, no audience, no expectations. Just warmth. Just presence. Just 2 people who finally saw each other clearly. The quiet promise. They sat like that for a long time, watching rain wash over the city. For the first time, Elena didn't feel like an outsider inside his world. And Adrian didn't feel alone inside his own life. Eventually she spoke, voice barely above a whisper. "If we survive this, everything changes." He nodded. "Yes." She looked at him carefully. "No more pretending." A pause. Then he answered, "I don't want to pretend anymore." The words felt like a promise neither fully understood yet, because love hadn't arrived suddenly. It had grown quietly between secrets, misunderstandings, and shared loneliness. And now that it was real, it gave their enemies something powerful to destroy, but it also gave them something stronger to fight for. For the first time since the chaos began, hope existed. Fragile, dangerous, and worth everything. The truth didn't arrive loudly, came quietly, like a final piece sliding into place after a puzzle everyone misunderstood. 3 nights after Victor Hale's broadcast, Adrian's private security moved Elena to a safe location outside the city. A secluded modern house hidden along the Hudson River. No press, no staff, no digital signals that could easily be traced. For the first time since chaos erupted, the world felt still. But stillness didn't bring peace. It brought answers. and answers were far more dangerous. The file that changed everything. Elena couldn't sleep. Rain tapped softly against the glass walls while distant lightning illuminated the river. On the dining table sat the folder Hale had given her weeks earlier, the same one she had been too afraid to open completely. Until now. Adrian entered quietly, finding her staring at documents spread across the table. Financial transfers, legal memos, private communications dating back nearly a decade. "You found something," he said. Her expression wasn't angry. It was shaken. I finally understand why they chose me." She slid a document toward him. At the top was Wolfe Global's original founding agreement. But Adrian froze when he saw a second name listed beside his father's. Miguel Cruz, Elena's father. Adrian blinked slowly. "That's impossible," he whispered. "My father never worked for Wolfe Global officially." Elena shook her head. "He didn't work for it," she said quietly. "He helped build it." The hidden past years before Adrian became CEO, Wolfe Global began as a risky financial technology startup. Adrian's father provided capital. Miguel Cruz provided the system, the financial algorithm that made the company successful. They were partners, equal partners. But something changed after Adrian's father died suddenly. The board restructured ownership quietly. Miguel's shares disappeared through legal manipulation. His role erased from public records. Adrian, young and grieving, inherited leadership without knowing the full truth. Elena's voice trembled as she read aloud from a letter written by her father. "If anything happens to me, the truth must reach Adrian. He deserves to know what they've turned his company into." Adrian felt the room spin. All these years, he believed corruption started after he became CEO. But it had begun long before, hidden behind people he trusted. "They didn't just steal money," Elena said softly. "They stole his legacy. And yours." The real mission. Adrian looked at her carefully. "If you knew this, why come after me?" Her eyes filled with emotion. "Because I didn't know the full story." She swallowed hard. "My father left instructions with someone before he died." She pulled out a small flash drive. "I was told to get close to you, gain your trust, access protected company archives." Adrian's expression darkened slightly. "So you were sent?" "Yes." The words hung heavy. "But not for revenge." She finally met his eyes fully. "My father believed you were the only person honest enough to fix what they destroyed." Silence filled the room. Everything shifted. The audience of their story, the invisible watchers of fate, suddenly saw the past differently. Elena was never meant to destroy Adrian. She was meant to reach him. The final twist. Adrian inserted the flash drive into his secure laptop. A video file appeared. Timestamp: 3 years earlier. He pressed play. Miguel Cruz appeared on screen. Older, tired, but determined. "Elena," the man said gently, speaking directly to the camera. "If you're watching this, something went wrong." Elena's breath trembled. Her father continued. "I trusted Adrian Wolfe's father. And I trust Adrian too. But he doesn't know the truth yet." Adrian leaned forward, stunned. "The board will try to turn you against him," Miguel said. "They need you separated. Alone, he's easier to control." He paused, emotion visible. "You must make him see what they've done, even if he hates you first." Elena covered her mouth as tears fell. The mission she believed was revenge had always been protection. Miguel's final words echoed through the room. "Together, you can finish what we started." The screen went black. Everything rewritten. Adrian sat in silence. Memories replayed differently now. Her arrival, her curiosity, her determination to uncover files instead of exploit them. Even her hesitation during their first meeting. She hadn't been calculating betrayal. She had been searching for truth. And unknowingly, for him. "You were never my enemy," he said quietly. She shook her head through tears. "I thought I was." He stood slowly, emotion breaking through years of restraint. "All this time," he said, voice unsteady, "we were fighting the same people." Elena laughed weakly. "And hurting each other while doing it." The The tragedy of it settled deeply. Two lonely lives manipulated into collision by forces afraid of their unity. The meaning of their story, the greatest shock, wasn't corruption or betrayal. It was realization. Their meeting wasn't coincidence, not revenge, not even fate in the romantic sense. It was unfinished history pulling two broken legacies back together. Adrian Wolfe and Elena Cruz weren't strangers. They were heirs to the same dream, one built by two men who believed business could be honest. And now enemies wanted that dream buried permanently. Adrian stepped closer. "So the real mission," he said softly. She nodded. "Was never to destroy you." A small, emotional smile formed. "It was to save what your father and mine created." He exhaled slowly, overwhelmed. For the first time, the chaos made sense. Why she challenged him. Why she cared. Why their connection felt deeper than coincidence. Their lives had been linked long before they met. Outside, thunder rolled across the river. Danger still waited. Enemies still watched. But now they understood the truth. And truth changed everything. Because love was no longer an accident between them. It was the final piece of a legacy powerful people had tried to erase. And together, they were finally ready to fight back. The storm arrived the same night the truth settled in. Lightning split the sky above the Hudson River, thunder rolling like distant explosions. Wind pushed violently against the glass walls of the safe house, turning reflections into fractured shadows. Inside, Adrian Wolfe stood motionless, staring at the dark water outside. Everything he believed about his life had changed in a matter of hours. His company's foundation, his father's legacy, Elena's purpose, even their relationship. Nothing had been accidental, and now there was only one thing left to do: face the people who built their lies. "The trap is set." Adrian closed his laptop slowly. "They want us separated," he said. Elena stood across the room, arms folded tightly, fear and determination battling inside her. "Yes. Then we stop running." She looked at him sharply. "They're expecting you to hide." A calm intensity entered his voice. "Exactly." For years Adrian fought corruption quietly, through legal channels, internal investigations, careful strategy. But this time was different. This was personal. Victor Hale had framed them both, leaked false evidence, and turned the world against them. If they stayed silent, Wolfe Global would collapse within days. And Elena would be blamed forever. Adrian turned toward her. "We confront them publicly." Her breath caught. "That's dangerous." "I know. They could destroy you completely." He held her gaze. "They already tried." The decision was made. The night of truth, 48 hours later, Wolfe Global headquarters glowed under relentless media attention. News vans crowded the streets. Reporters shouted questions into cameras. Markets waited nervously. Adrian Wolfe had called an emergency press conference, his first unscripted appearance in years. Inside the building, tension felt suffocating. Executives whispered nervously. Security doubled. Some employees watched with hope. Others expected collapse. Elena stood beside Adrian backstage, heart racing. "You don't have to do this alone," she said quietly. He looked at her, softer now than the powerful image the world knew. "I'm not alone." The words carried meaning beyond the moment. She nodded, fighting emotion. But fear lingered, because confronting Hale meant exposing everything, including her deception at the beginning. The world would judge her, maybe hate her. Adrian noticed the hesitation. "You can still walk away," he said gently. "No," she replied instantly. Her voice steadied. "I spent years chasing truth. I'm not leaving when it finally matters." A faint smile touched his lips. That courage was one of the reasons he trusted her now. The confrontation, the stage lights turned on. Cameras flashed endlessly as Adrian stepped to the podium. Murmurs filled the room. He looked calm, controlled. But Elena, standing just behind the curtain, saw the truth. Tension in his shoulders, emotion hidden beneath discipline. He began simply. "For years, Wolfe Global has been accused of corruption tied to events I myself never fully understood." Reporters leaned forward. Screens broadcast live worldwide. Adrian continued, "Tonight, I will show you who truly benefited from those crimes." Gasps spread as Victor Hale entered the room unexpectedly, escorted by legal representatives. Confident, smug, he hadn't expected exposure. He believed Adrian lacked proof. Hale smiled coldly. "This is a mistake, Adrian," he said loudly. "You're destroying yourself." Adrian didn't react. Instead, he signaled the screen behind him. Documents appeared. Original partnership agreements. Financial trails. Video testimony from Miguel Cruz. The room erupted in whispers. Hale's confidence faltered. "You forged this," Hale snapped. Then Elena stepped forward. The audience froze. The woman accused of betrayal now stood beside the billionaire. Her voice trembled at first, then strengthened. "My father died trying to expose you." Silence fell instantly. She faced the cameras. "I came into Adrian Wolfe's life believing he was responsible." Her confession shocked the room. Adrian watched her carefully, understanding the risk she was taking. "I lied," she continued. "I pretended. I investigated him." Reporters exchanged stunned looks. "But the truth," she said, voice breaking slightly, "is that he was fighting the same corruption my father tried to stop." She turned toward Hale. "You used me to finish what you started." Hale's composure shattered. "You were never supposed to understand," he hissed. Security moved closer as legal authorities stepped forward. Evidence streamed across screens, undeniable now. The conspiracy collapsed in real time. Emotional peak, but the real climax wasn't legal victory. It was emotional truth. As chaos filled the room, Adrian turned toward Elena, ignoring cameras entirely. "You could have walked away tonight," he said quietly. "So could you." Their voices softened beneath the noise. For a moment the world disappeared. Only honesty remained. "I almost pushed you away," he admitted, "because I was afraid history would repeat itself." Her eyes shimmered with emotion. "I almost left, because I didn't think I deserved your trust." He shook his head gently. "We both believed lies about each other." A pause. Heavy, meaningful, and still stayed, he added. That realization hit them both at once. Love hadn't survived because circumstances were easy. It survived because they chose each other despite fear, despite betrayal, despite truth. The final choice police escorted Victor Hale away as reporters shouted questions. Markets stabilized instantly. News headlines shifted from scandal to revelation. But Adrian barely noticed. He looked only at Elena, the woman who entered his life as an enemy, the woman who became his greatest risk, and now his greatest strength. "You changed everything," he said softly. She smiled through tears. "So did you." For the first time, he didn't care about cameras watching, didn't care about public perception. He reached for her hand openly. Not performance, not contract, choice. And she held on tightly, because the truth they faced together had stripped away every lie. What remained was raw, undeniable connection. Two broken histories finally aligned. The storm outside began to calm, but inside their hearts, emotion still thundered, powerful, overwhelming, and real. The battle for truth was over. Now came the hardest part, learning how to live without fear, and finally allow love to stay. The world moved on faster than either of them expected. News cycles shifted. Headlines changed. Victor Hale's arrest dominated media for weeks before fading into another story swallowed by time. Investigations cleared Adrian Wolfe completely. Wolfe Global stock surged higher than ever, now rebuilt on transparency instead of silence. To the public, it looked like victory. Justice served. Truth revealed. The billionaire redeemed. But real endings never happen in headlines. They happen quietly, in the spaces left behind after chaos ends. After the storm 2 months later, New York felt different. Autumn painted the city gold and amber. Cold air replaced summer heat. Crowds rushed through streets unaware of how close everything had come to collapsing. Adrian stood once again in his penthouse overlooking Manhattan. The same windows, the the same skyline, the same city that once felt unbearably empty. But tonight, something had changed. The silence no longer felt heavy, felt peaceful, because loneliness was no longer waiting for him when the day ended. Still, uncertainty lingered. Elena had kept her distance since the trial ended. Not emotionally, physically. She moved into her own apartment again, rebuilding her life outside crisis and danger. They spoke every day. Dinners sometimes. Long conversations that stretched late into the night. But neither rushed to define what came next. Because real feelings were more fragile than fake relationships ever were. And both feared breaking something they fought so hard to save. Her new beginning. Elena stood inside a small office downtown. Sunlight streaming through wide windows, boxes still unpacked around her. A new plaque rested on the desk. Cruz and Wolfe Foundation, Financial Ethics Initiative together. They had created it using recovered funds from the corruption case. Its mission was simple: protect whistleblowers, expose financial abuse, ensure no family experienced what theirs had endured. Her father's dream lived again, not through revenge, through change. She touched the plaque gently, emotion rising unexpectedly. For years, grief defined her purpose. Now purpose felt hopeful. But hope came with fear, because one question still haunted her. Where did she belong now? In her own life again, or in Adrian's? The last conversation that evening, Adrian invited her to the penthouse. No event, no press, just dinner. When she arrived, the city glowed beneath sunset, warm orange fading into deep blue. He cooked himself. Badly. She laughed the moment she saw the kitchen. "You're a billionaire," she teased. "You could hire the best chef in the world." "I wanted tonight to be real," he said simply. The words lingered. They ate slowly, conversation easy but layered with unspoken emotion. Eventually they moved to the terrace. Wind brushed gently across the skyline. The same place where distance once grew between them. Now it felt like a beginning. Adrian leaned against the railing. "I've been thinking," he said. She smiled slightly. "That usually means something serious." "It does." He hesitated, rare vulnerability returning. "For most of my life, I controlled everything to avoid getting hurt." She listened quietly. "And then you walked in with secrets, chaos, and completely ruined that system." She laughed softly. "I'm sorry. I'm not." The sincerity in his voice stilled the moment. Choosing without fear, he turned toward her fully. "When the contract ended," he said, "I thought we'd go back to being strangers." She swallowed. "So did I. But we didn't." Silence stretched, not uncomfortable, just honest. He stepped closer. "No contracts this time," he said gently. "No expectations. No pretending." Her heart raced. "What are you asking?" He smiled faintly. "I'm asking if you want to stay. Not because of history or missions or shared battles." A pause. "Just because you want me." The simplicity of the question made it terrifying. For years she lived guided by purpose, grief, and responsibility. Now she faced something harder. Choice. Real love required vulnerability without guarantees. She searched his eyes, no walls left, no guarded distance. Just sincerity. "I was sent to find the truth," she said softly. "And," she took his hand, "I found you instead." Emotion crossed his face, relief mixed with wonder. And for the first time, neither feared what tomorrow might bring. Because trust wasn't built from perfection. It was built from surviving truth together. Bittersweet realization later that night. They stood quietly watching the city lights. Elena spoke first. "You know, if my father hadn't died, we might never have met." The thought carried sadness. Adrian nodded slowly. Some beginnings come from painful endings. They both understood the cost of their happiness. Loss shaped their path. Grief brought them together. Bittersweet truth settled gently between them. Love didn't erase pain. It gave it meaning. The final moment months later, spring arrived. The foundation helped hundreds of people already. Wolfe Global transformed into the ethical company Adrian always wanted. And slowly, naturally, their lives intertwined without pressure. One evening, long after the world stopped watching them, they walked through Central Park unnoticed. No cameras, no contracts, just two people sharing quiet laughter. As the sun set behind the trees, Elena rested her head lightly against his shoulder. Adrian looked around at ordinary couples passing by. For the first time, he felt like one of them. Not a billionaire, not a headline, just a man who finally allowed someone to stay. He squeezed her hand gently. Years ago, he believed love was a weakness powerful people couldn't afford. Now he understood something different. Love wasn't what nearly destroyed him. Fear was. And as they disappeared into the fading light together, Adrian Wolfe realized the greatest fortune he ever built wasn't his empire. It was trusting someone enough to see his broken parts and choosing each other anyway. Because sometimes the person sent to change your life forever isn't your enemy. They're the reason your story finally begins. Do you like this personality?